Hello, everyone, and welcome to my author's chat of the week. As always, I'm going to be waiting to see if I can see when my co-host is live along with me, so I can invite him into my chat. But yeah, how is everyone's evening going? It's been a couple big wild days in the book talk community if you haven't been following. I'm sure we'll get to some of that a little later on in this chat. But as I wait to see when Drew will join me, I will ask my regular starter question, what are you reading? Because that's always a curious thing for me. I'm constantly trying to get better about reading a wider variety of books, as well as more in my genre, because I'm an epic fantasy writer. Hello, hello. Let's see. Keeping an eye to see when Drew goes live. I know he'll be joining us hopefully in a moment. We've been chatting behind the scenes. But yeah, it'll be the first time I talk with him, and I actually met Drew for the first time at a con event. I was at Dragon Con in the fall, and here I see him. Let's see if I invite, send. But yeah, Dragon Con in the fall. Haven't no. Let's see how his life's been going. Hello, hello?
Hey,
Can
I
you
can
hear
hear
me?
you. I think I jumped in your live.
Yeah. I see you here, but I don't see your face. Are you live at the moment? It looks like your camera's off for
Yeah,
whatever reason.
there we go.
Boom!
What
Fantastic.
up?
Hi, how are you? Long time no see.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing I'm doing okay, keeping busy, and I hope that's the same for you because as a uh, at least for me as an indie author, I'm always feeling like I'm keeping busy and always running around.
Yeah, definitely. I actually got some pretty good news today. I just got the
Ooh.
proof back for the fourth book in my series, so I'll be doing that for the next week and a half, 2 weeks probably.
Fantastic. Well, actually, while you are here, in case you haven't, I'm pretty sure you've jumped into one or two of my chats before, but I'm going to
Yeah,
let you introduce yourself because you're my co-host this week, and let everybody know who you are, what you write, what you're all about. I'll do a little brief spiel on my end, and then we'll go on from there, and you can definitely tell us a little bit more about your proof.
cool.
What's coming
Yeah,
out?
so I'm Drew Bailey. I write fantasy. I'm starting to dabble more into horror, but typically dark fantasy. My two books, I've got them handy. First book in the Giftborn Chronicles, and this is the second one, called The Royal Nothings and They Once Had Names. And I am currently writing the fifth book in that series. The third book I'm hoping will be coming out here within the next few months. I don't have an exact release date, but I'm ramping up.
Well, good, good. That's so cool. Though I think you and I work a little bit, at least a little similarly, in the sense that I'm always writing a number of books ahead of what I'm publishing. It's just how I cycle and where I try to keep up with things. But that's exciting that you'll have I'm assuming a spring release, or are you thinking more like summer?
So like con season's starting to ramp up. I've got a few
Mm-hmm.
kind of lined up between March and June. I'll definitely be going to Dragon Con as well. Um, Ideally, I would say there's a big con in Charlotte in June, so I would like to have it out before then. My hope is in spring, so March, April would be what I'm hoping Falstaff, who's my publisher, is going to, hook a brother up.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Yeah, no, I'm having tentatively I'm having a spring release. It's for the third book of my Jet Chronicles since that's the one I'm running my Kickstarter on, and I've been
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of dabbling that, but that one will probably release towards the end of March this year. So that one's I know coming down the pipe, but I understand. I like that feeling. And you remind me, are you a small publisher company, or how do you produce your work?
Yeah. Yeah. So Falstaff Books is they're based out of Charlotte, and they primarily do like various types of like fantasy. So they do everything from like urban fantasy, like fantasy romance, all of that, as well as like, kind of dabble in like dark fantasy horror as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and some sci-fi. So they've got a good mix, but yeah, basically they're my publisher. And I'm kind of at their mercy in a way,
I understand.
Yep, signed a contract, and it's like, well, whatever you guys say, and I'm just going to keep writing words, and they keep liking it. So that's all I can ask for.
Well, let me ask also before we get too sidetracked. Give us the little taste of what your first book of your series is about. Like, what's your blurb? How do you pitch it to the new person?
So, and that's a very good question, because I feel like where I've arrived and what I'm writing with book 5, like each book kind of has its own theme. I will say that when I first started writing this series was back in like the heyday of the first season of Game of Thrones and the first season of The Walking Dead coming out, and that was
Oh
like
yeah, the
2010.
Grimdark-esque. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I like a lot of aspects of both of these shows. I really started getting into the books and the graphic novels, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to write a mashup of this. And that's what I kind of pitched the first book as, because I wanted to kind of have that like sort of grimdark realness in the first
Mm-hmm.
book. But I feel like as the series progresses, and I try to warn people about this, I'm like, you get more into magic and you get more into like a lot of fantasy elements that are not necessarily very prevalent in the first book. Like it kind of like starts expanding, especially in the second and third books.
Oh, I love it. I actually like that. I mean, I think especially when you cater to a more adult audience, even case in point, even the first Song of Fire and Ice, Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones proper. That one was very low magic based, but as the series goes on, you're starting to introduce stuff slowly at
Yeah,
a
you get
time.
like a
But
feel
yeah,
of magic. You're like, okay, well they're doing this, and they're
yeah,
dragons, and they're
and it builds on
kind of like
itself. So
rich
I
people.
understand that for my adult series, my Dark Viking novellas, The Guardian Speaker, the first one, I mean, obviously I'm letting you know it's a fantasy off the bat, but even still, you don't know to what extent I'm going to get you immersed in this very high fantasy, Norse mythology based universe. You have the 9 realms, you have Yggdrasil, the world tree, but in the beginning you're seeing it from the world of man, so you're like, okay, we're gonna be kind of like Vikings smashed up with, some fantasy vibes. I'm like, nah, it's gonna be more fantasy as the series goes on. I promise you. You just have to kind of ease into it, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, we're actually dealing with giants and elves and
Yeah,
dwarves and all those elements in there. I'm like, yes, we are.
and I feel like largely for me, like a lot of the positive feedback I've gotten about it have been the fantasy elements.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
decent.
one of the comparisons that I constantly hear, and I might not have known I was doing this at the time because I had definitely seen the series. I know I'd seen the anime, is an anime called Berserk. I get
Oh yeah.
constant comparisons to that series now, and I'm like, you know what? That's actually way cooler than me pitching this as Game of Thrones meets Walking Dead. I love that series, so it's possible, like in the back of my mind, like psychologically,
Mm-hmm.
uh, what's the word I'm thinking of here? Whatever, ever present in the back of my mind, I was
Mm-hmm.
trying to write a story similar to that. So
Yeah, no, I love that. And actually, the funny thing is, I haven't seen a lot of anime, but
hi,
that is
Jason.
one of the shows that I have seen, Berserk. So I totally
It's so
understand your
good.
reference.
It's so good. I've read a lot of the manga as well. It's just, yeah, like I will put it up there as like one of the absolute things that I have drawn inspiration from throughout this whole story process.
That's so cool. That is very neat. So kind of going back to the fact that you have a publisher and you work through and they're in control obviously of your release schedule to an extent because, they're the ones I'm assuming deal with the editing and the formatting. And to what
Yeah.
extent do you have control over cover design and stuff like that, or their edits, or once you give your
So
baby over there, then they take the next
this
step?
this cover was one of like I think I sent like 5 or 6 different concept designs. I was like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is the kind of style that I'm looking for. I wanted it to be kind of like a graphic novel almost style.
I
Um,
like that.
and so that's how it started. Now, this is on me. They sent me an email that I just completely just blurped on for the second book, just
Oops.
missed it, and they came up with this. And when I saw it, I was like, "Oh my god, that's perfect. That's what I wanted for the second book." So I didn't even argue with them. I was like, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. We could put it out there. That's that's the one. I've already sent them a couple cover designs for the third book, but we haven't like decided on anything yet. If I remember kind of how it works, it'll probably be about a month before. It's like when I know the release date, we'll kind of like decide on some things. But that's the basic like style. It'll have like that kind of split style where you've got the title with like
I do like that.
a cool, like cover design of a character or something like scene going on.
So since I unfortunately have yet to read your book, we will change this. I promise you. I'm just a very slow reader, so I've been going book by book. And but with that said, your cover character in the first book, is it supposed to represent, I'm assuming, one of the characters in your book series, the main one?
So this one, so I wouldn't say I necessarily have like a main character. I write multiple POV. So there are 3 point of view characters in the story. And this, like, I wanted it to be kind of ambiguous enough and kind of like show the light versus dark style, I guess, of kind of how I try to write characters. So that would be kind of like the style of what I was going for there. There are a number of characters that this could actually be. And I kind of like that ambiguity as well, because you can't really tell. You could leave it up to interpretation. This could be one of 3 different characters. It could be Remy, it could be Marcy, it could be Ramona, and I kind of wanted it to be like that.
I like that.
Or like when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is just perfect, and that was my interpretation of it, and I just kind of left it like that.
So based on your names, Remy, Ramona, and I missed the middle name, Marcy. So you have 2 females, 1 male, 1 female. How do you?
So point of view wise, I do like to keep it kind of as close to down the middle, because I love writing. I find it more fun to write female POV characters than male characters.
Okay, I was going to ask, how do you feel about writing the?
I think that my male characters are just too emo, and I've like had to like really work my way out of that. Like, and I don't know why they always feel that way. And I feel like the female characters just feel more lifelike to me. They feel like actual like characters that I like. I enjoy writing and I can appreciate, where I felt like it took me a little while to actually start differentiating some of my male POV characters. Like in my head, like I just kind of felt like for the longest time, I had been writing for probably 3 or 4 years, trying to differentiate personality styles and that kind of thing. And it took me a while to do that, where I felt like it didn't with my female characters. So
I gotcha. That makes total sense. Yeah, I know. When it's weird when I'm writing my characters, and I always write from a singular point of view, but I have a wide cast of other characters in and around. But even still, when I'm trying to make all the characters feel lifelike and real and dimensional, and with their flaws and with their quirks, if I'm trying to control too much of the storyline and like really force the character to do what I want them to do, it feels like, it does feel off. And I don't know if you've ever sensed something like that, but for me,
absolutely.
If I overforce something, that's where the character loses that dimensionality. I think, is that a word? Did I make a word? I think I made up a word.
I like it. Like, accepted.
Okay.
No, I 100% agree with that. In fact, I feel like, I don't know if this, like, so it actually started out as 4 POV characters, and I ended up like absorbing one into Remy's character to, I feel like, give him a more lifelike feel and to add those like extra elements that I felt like was missing. So that's what ended up happening, I guess, for that character. But
interesting. I've never heard of the background behind the scenes of a character being absorbed by another character, but I like that. That is interesting. I like that.
No, I mean, it was kind of after I'd finished the first book and I thought it was going to be a trilogy, because I think a lot of writers, and I was definitely like this when I first started writing, I'm like, I'm going to write like a 1,000-page epic. I'm going to put some Priory of the Orange Tree on these people and they're not going to know.
I'm looking down at you, Jason, wherever you are. You're
and it just didn't work like that. And in my head, is like I was writing the story, I wanted to do more of a volume, kind of like what I was talking about with the graphic novels. I wanted to start writing more of a volume-based story where it was all one story, but it's not a brick. It's just like, you get 300, 400 pages in volume 1, and then in 2, and then 3. But each volume kind of has like its own specific theme, and maybe its own specific villain and that kind of thing.
I like that. Yeah. No, I totally understand that. I mean, let's look at Tolkien. The Lord of the Rings is actually one book, but printed in 3 bindings. So they do have kind of their sub arc, but it was meant to be one book. And I know for my novellas, that was one of the things I wanted to do, was challenge myself to produce smaller works, but really have a continuous flow throughout the series. So yes, I wanted to make sure they have their succinct little individual arcs, but also feel like they are a longer epic once you read them from one side to the other.
Yeah.
That's at least the end game. We shall see what people think about it.
They'll
probably look at me and be like, better. You're too Grimdark, you killed off unalived too many people. Oops.
Yeah. No, I totally. I feel like I've definitely unalived way more characters than I feel comfortable with, and I like. There are times now writing in the 5th book in a series where I'm just like, you know who would be great? Having this character that didn't make it through book 2, be in this right now, like.
Yep.
And the fact that you write, I didn't actually look at how many, but I think it was at least like, what, 9 or 10 in your Viking series?
I have 8 now, but there will be close to 16 all said and done. But they are novellas, so they are smaller. They're not full size. They are smaller works. So it's like 4 of those is like a normal book. Let's put it that way. Okay. So gotcha. That gives you a little reference. So, but it looks nice on the shelf though. When you have at least the virtual shelf, when you have all the pretty colors.
No, I like that. I've got to get a little setup. I got to get a little book setup going somewhere, just so I can, when I'm doing my little TikToks, I can just sit right in front of it, and it's just instant advertisement. But
mirror image posters, great, and it's just like I sit here and I'm like, I automatically now know exactly where all the books are that are on this poster, and I'm just like, can like look at you, be like, Isara's Claw is the one in the blue right over here.
And so that one is your YA series, right?
My Shifter series kind of ended up, it's a funny story. Good question. The one in the blue, and this is the tricky part, technically falls into young adult. But this was my first series, so of course I'm going to do everything the wrong way. I meant it to be a standalone, realized later on that it wasn't the case. That I was going to have 3 more. And so pretty much all at once, I knew the at least the main points of the 3 others, the sequels. But the 3 sequels got a lot darker. So as overall, I cater it to being new adult because it is grittier versus young adult. So it kind of splices in between. But my young adult series on my Portal Fantasy, and that's the one that I'm pushing a lot this year because with the Kickstarter and the fact that I'm finally hitting those 3 books for an indie author means it's a good time to start advertising. It's just a good time to start spreading the word of that series. So I have young adult, new adult, and adult. A little bit of everything.
No, I feel like that's the way to do it, though. I don't know that I have the capacity now to put myself into being able to do young adult. I think that it would be cool if I could, but I just don't know.
Write whatever you feel comfortable with. And so if you like the darker fantasy, to the grimdark, to the horror, to whatever, write that. If you that creative vibe that's like, I'm going to write a young adult. Okay, do that too.
No, I just mean this in the most respectful way. I just think it's cool that that when authors can like layer and they can do it, because I feel like I'm very one track. It's like, yo, this is my style. I'm doing it like this, and I don't really jump around that much. And I'm trying to break myself.
That's not a bad thing. That makes marketing so much easier. Theoretically.
No, that is fair. Yes, I agree that it's like I have a very like, this is how it is. So this is what you're getting.
I know once you have your fans, they know exactly what they're going to get, and they aren't going to be disappointed. For me, it's kind of like I have to be very specific. I'm like, if you're reading my darker Viking fantasy, just know my young adult is young adult. it's portal fantasy, it's adventure forward, it's more Tolkien-esque versus Game of Thrones. Lots of things go on, lots of creatures, lots of battles, different vibes. And different
So do
maturity
you
levels for the main characters too. So that can also, some people don't like reading the angsty teenager characters because they've lived it, they've done it, they don't want to go back, and I understand.
no, I love when I read a book that's like that, and I'm just like, you know what, this was a really good book. It's not so. I think that all writers think that, you know, that they have the thought of, could I have written that? You know, like,
Mm-hmm.
what are the chances that I could have done this, or something similar? And I get those thoughts about when people write a really good like YA book. Like one of my favorites is, and I haven't read the last two now, I think, but I read the first couple of Hunger Games, and I really liked the first book. I was like, this is how you write YA, in my opinion. But I don't think that I could have written it.
Fair. I was gonna say, from the history of our current history of all things books, you know, that was very revolutionary for YA. It was first time that I think a lot of people realized YA could get gritty to an extent, you know, and
Right.
I know there was
I
a lot of
agree.
backlash because a lot of parents were like, I can't believe I realized bought this book for my kid, and everybody, there are a bunch of kids gladiator battling each other in the forest. I'm like, yeah, okay, yes, maybe note that, but it did change the way we view YA, which was cool. Though I will just say that was the first book that I ever read, and as much as I liked the plot line and other things, I didn't like the main character.
No,
It was
that's
just
fair.
one of the first ones that I was like, huh, I didn't think she was that likable, in my opinion. But I love
I
the
do
book
think that
overall.
that was, I do think that that was one of the weaker parts of it. I thought the whole concept, though, and before I'd ever seen the Hunger Games or even heard of it, I'd watched a movie. It's a Japanese movie called Battle Royale, and I knew
Hmm.
that like, and I was hearing like all the things like from friends and that kind of thing. They're just like, this Hunger Games is like a ripoff of Battle Royale, and so
No,
I always kind of had a bias, and it took me to. I mean, I was like, this was like maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 years ago, not very long, like in my mid 30s. I'm like, oh, I'll read the Hunger Games. Like, I don't even know where I got a copy of it from. It was probably from like someone in the family, and I was surprised. I was like, you know what? I should have given this one a chance when it first came out, because I'd already seen the movie by then as well. But I compare it to a lot of the other like really popular YA ones that like I just, there are not very many YA novels I can really like, and that's the only one here recently. But I do think, you know, your series talking about like, is it both a portal fantasy and shifter, or is it
so
two
those are
separate?
those are the two, and that's why I was like, the Shifter is my new adult, and it's
Mm,
based in a kingdom on the verge of war where the shapeshifters and the human populace have to decide if they can put aside their differences in order to potentially unite and defend their kingdom against this greater threat. And that's kind of the premise of the Incarn saga. My other
gotcha.
one is, yeah, labels itself as a portal fantasy. It's one of these newer named subgenres, but yeah, it's a magical multiverse. So 12 magical worlds, multiple dimensions. We're bouncing around between them a lot, but each realm essentially that you get to meet and explore is based off predominantly off a different mythos, so different mythology from around the world. So that's been a lot of fun to go. This is my Greco-Roman. This is Sumerian. This is going to be a little more Chinese based or something like that, or Hindu, and create these worlds with all the kind of creatures and beings that exist within those ecosystems. So having fun with it so far.
That's awesome. Do you know how long do you already have like a plan, like a full scope of how big this series you might think you're going to write it?
Yeah, I think that one will probably break out between like 7 and 8 books, depending on how I just divide them. Um, Now I could be surprised and a book could emerge because I'm getting too wordy at some point. Who knows? But that's kind of where I am. 7 to 8 books. I have, like I said, the third one's coming out in March. It's Kickstarter's on right now, and then I'm writing the fifth one. So I'm kind of with you, pacing that way, where I'm writing the fifth one, putting out the third. But yeah, it's kind of,
No, that's
and
fair.
also
Okay.
what you were talking about. Each of them have a very succinct, very unique vibe per book, but there's definitely the whole overarching story as well. So it's kind of interesting because the first one is called the 12 Tasks, and so the premise is ever since the beginning of existence, there are times where existence itself is threatened, and or at those moments of crises, a hero arises. The hero is always called as the Jed. They have certain inborn abilities, and they're always given the same items to help them during the upcoming wars and everything to kind of settle these unrest on a cosmic scale, essentially. And so when my main character arrives on a world that's not Earth, there was a prophecy saying the next Jed is potentially going to be a child of Earth. And she's quickly told this and, saying, you might be the next chosen one, because it's definitely a chosen one archetype, but you have to complete 12 tasks, one on each of the magical worlds to earn the 12 items of the Jed. If you succeed, well, good. That means you lived. On the other hand, it also means a giant war's on the horizon and you need to be prepared. And so that kind of kickstarts the series, but each one definitely plays with different concepts. One was fun because I was trying to see if I could do a portal, again, heavy in the fantasy, but there's still sci-fi elements of one where I'm playing with the idea of jumping through time back and forth, and
Yeah.
that got
Okay.
really complicated for me, and I was like, maybe I'm not gonna do this again anytime soon, because that got super complicated in the planning. But it's a fun series.
There's a chance that I'm dealing with something very similar right now in my series. So, but no, I mean, I love Portal Fantasy just in general. Like, just the whole like the Alice in Wonderland concept just has always been super intriguing. So, I've definitely found a way to kind of weave that into the fabric of the Giftborn Chronicles.
I love that.
Yeah, like it's and I do. I think that's like Portal Fantasy is just fun to write because you can do anything. You're not necessarily like confined to, oh, we're just in a fantasy setting, or oh, we're just in a sci-fi setting. You can kind of mix some things up. I definitely take liberties with like horror elements in mine. Like it's more of a Hellraiser type thing than it is like it's not good. Like the portals are not good. I'll say that.
Good to know.
I don't want to get too
Good to know.
spoilery.
Don't go through your portals. I got you.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. But then there are also like, I mean, they're different. We'll just say it's not necessarily like teleporting, but it's like an underground sort of like network of portals in the world. And then there's also like the magic can cause other kind of like rifts that, yeah, are not good. Those are not the not good ones.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I see we have a couple comments popping up. One was a little bit ago talking about how Katniss Everdeen was a hard character to swallow from the Game of Thrones. I understand. She's just not necessarily a likable character, but I thought that was neat because it was the first time I read a book where the main character was not a likable character. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I can write characters that don't have to be loved. How do I want to use this going forward? But another comment popped up, said in the 12 tasks, the threat was never fully explained unless I missed it. Yes. The whole point of the first one is she this potential next Jed? And then going forward from books 2 and on, you start meeting. I have technically 4 big bads, 3 that work together, and one's a standalone in that series. There are other people too, but I don't know how many villains do you have in your series? I like multiple villains. They always give different.
So there's just like I operate under the whole like it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Like, and every time I think that you like overcome something, it's like, oh, but plot twist. There's a whole another level to this that there were the little seeds that were around the whole time that you just didn't really pay attention to, and now it's this. I love that. So in terms of like how I try to implement Grimdark in my story, I try to write like sympathetic villains and flawed heroes. So I don't try to like say, hey, this person's a villain, or if they are very villainous and it's obvious that they're not a good, person, I try to give them something that's like, maybe someone out there reads this and they're like, yeah, I can identify with this person, this character.
That's the best way.
So I don't necessarily write. I'll put it like this. It's more like the villains. Like for the first book, I would say the villains are just it's very Walking Dead. They're just trying to they're fighting against like their own people that are turned
Mm-hmm.
into something else. It's very like Last of Us. Just in terms of like these people couldn't really help it, but then you find out that there's a source behind this, and then
Dun,
once
dun,
they find
dun.
out and defeat that source, then there's something behind the source, you know, and it kind of like the rabbit hole gets deeper.
I
um
love that.
but I will say usually I try not to, like, if I have like an overarching like menacing type
Mm-hmm.
thing, it's usually a creature or it's some sort of like cosmic entity more than anything else. But
Well,
I will
that's
say that I write like all of my POV characters. I think, you know, they've got their flaws, but I think that some of them are rootable, and some of them I could understand if someone was just like, "I hate reading this POV character. Why are you doing this?" So
well, no, again, you want to have flawed protagonist and relatable antagonist. They may not, we can remove the hero and villain if that's too much too, but like you can have like someone that causes problems and not necessarily be the big bad for like in my Viking series, one of the antagonists in the first few of them is just a person. And he's just, his belief system clashes with other people's, and he's there to serve as a sort of punisher, but as the series goes on, you meet a lot of other, again, I'll say antagonistic creatures and entities as you're trying to figure out what is going on in the whole scope of the long running plot. But you don't necessarily need a true I'm a villain to conquer the world. Actually, the best ones are the ones that either you don't realize are villains for so long, or ones that you have stuff that you
that's my
relate
favorite
to.
thing to write.
Let's do a Marvel Thanos. His reasoning is relatable in a weird way. Is just what he did was horrifying as a
Yeah.
villain. But yeah, those are the best, I think. So
I
for you, outside of the characters you've written, what is your favorite, or maybe we'll go with favorite. What is your favorite character from any other book?
let me think. I have quite a
And
few that I would just say like these are like characters that I really loved. Let me think.
oh, it's fine. I was like, that one's always a hard one because it's so general, and you have to like run through your head like your whole library of stuff you've ever read and be like, wait.
I always tend to like really like side characters too. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
you know, I always like, for instance, like I in the movie, I will say at least I always favored someone like Sam over Frodo, like that, those
Mm-hmm.
type of side characters that I don't ever feel like get the love. I'm trying to think of like, because I've been reading a lot of horror here lately, and so I feel like with horror, it's really tough to like character. You know, you don't get that same kind of feel that you get with fantasy. So I'm like trying to harken back to fantasy. The first thing that I can think of, and it was one of the last books I read, was Orca from the Shadow of the Gods, Hunger of the Gods. It's
Mm-hmm.
John Gwynn's Viking series. She's just, I think when I was writing the character of Ramona, I was picturing a very similar character, and so to see somebody else like write this type of character, where they've got a lot of heart, they just want to be like left alone, they with their family, and just kind of like live a normal life that isn't battle and that kind of thing, but through circumstances they're kind of pushed to the edge and are
Mm-hmm.
forced to like fight for their people, fight for their family, that kind of thing. And I like characters like that, but that also have like this, what I call it is like Bloody Nine syndrome, where it's like you've got this like Jekyll and Hyde version of yourself, and you're pushed to a point, and you just become like a berserker, you know.
Yeah.
And I really
Yeah.
appreciate that about her character. Yeah, that was probably one of my favorites recently. And speaking of which, I did like Bloody Nine, who's from a Grimdark series called The First Law by Joe Abercrombie. Um, Trying to think though of something not fantasy that I've read recently. I'm like looking at books
Well,
here.
yeah, that was a good point you made earlier. It was like when for a question like that, my mind jumps into, obviously, one of the things is maybe fantasy or sci-fi. I mean, I guess you can say the same thing with the people who read romance. I don't read a lot of romance, but there's a huge group of people who do. But depending on your genre, you may have a genre like horror that, doesn't necessarily cater to long-running characters, depending on what happens in the horror. But yeah, so who's your favorite horror writer? Let me go ask that. I have not read a lot of horror, and so
That's an
not
open-ended
true
question.
horror recently. And it's something that, I love watching horror. TV shows, especially movies. I love horror movies, but I've
Yeah.
never really read a lot of horror. I've read it.
I have not like it, and that was kind of something that's changed over like the last maybe 3 years or so. Because
Hmm.
prior to like that we'll say 3 years ago, I just didn't. I didn't read a lot of horror. It was all like fantasy and sci-fi, and that
Hmm.
was pretty much it. And I honestly didn't read a whole lot before like my 20s. And then
Hmm.
between that and like my mid 30s was all, fantasy, I feel like. And so now, yeah, it's like I started reading like just a couple like novellas, and it was really when I got on TikTok, and was when I was getting so much like, you got to check this person and this person. I just, anybody that like loved horror books, I started following, because I was like, okay, this is like free. I don't even have to like try to look for stuff anymore. Like I just have a list. I could just buy this list. And, and,
That's what
and
I
that really changed the game for me. So like the last couple of years, like I'll pick up like 10 at a time, and it's like I just blow through them. And horror books are usually, I mean, unless you're talking about it, are 200 to 300 pages. They're quick reads. You can usually
okay.
read them within a couple days. I feel like a lot of them are novella length. But
Oh, good.
trying to think of like there are quite a few that are really good that I feel like I've learned recently. Like Josh Mallerman's one that I really like. I've read a couple of his works. Paul Tremblay. He's, I think the movie for he wrote a book called A Cabin at the End of the World, and the movie Knock at the Cabin just came out, and it's based off of that.
Oh,
Um,
fun.
I actually have not read a lot of Stephen King. I've read some of the Dark Tower series, but outside of that, like
Hmm.
I've read Misery, and uh, that's pretty much. I think that's mostly it. Well, I've read it and Misery, and that's it. Like 3 or 4
Yep.
books.
Well, I feel like I should probably dabble with the Dark Tower series. But that is very
I,
sci-fi.
I, thought it was, I thought it was
Fantasy.
okay. Well, yeah, I mean, there are like sci-fi-ish elements, I
Okay.
guess. I don't know. I kind of got like I always kind of got like an old world like Western type feel from it.
Interesting.
But
Okay.
yeah, it does have like other world, like a supernatural type feel to it, I guess. More correct word.
Here's a question. Okay, I wasn't sure if you could see all of them, but if you want,
Yeah,
I'll read it out just because when I repurpose this on YouTube, people won't get to see the question. So the question popped up saying, have either of us read any lit RPG or in the lit RPG genre, essentially akin to sci-fi or fantasy plus video game elements? Which is funny. I'm about to ask my question of the day. I'm doing a genre series, and the lit RPG questions coming up in the next week or so. But yes, let me go let you see. Have you read any books that kind of fall into that category? Literature based on or vibing like a role
I've
playing
read
game?
some like D&D, like some R.A. Salvatore books before, but that's been my kind of extent into reading that. Like I've read a lot of the Drizzt books, for instance,
Hmm.
but
I've heard
outside
that
of that,
name thrown around a lot, but I haven't read them.
yeah,
But,
like that's it for me.
and
And that's sad. Like, and I've actually started watching a Critical Role. It's taken me a while to kind of catch up. I'm in campaign 3, and of course I love Fox Machina, which is a show on
yep,
Amazon.
yep. We've been watching through that second season.
Yeah, it's great. Like I look forward to it. Like that's how I want to start my weekends. Um,
Yep.
it's yeah, like I feel like I'm starting now to kind of get more into like RPG and lit RPG type stuff, and but it was not a big part of me before.
No,
But
and
I'm getting more open to it. How about you?
yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, when COVID happened, one of my groups of friends decided to start delving into the worlds of D&D, and so we started doing the online gaming that way. And of course, my author self comes up with a huge backstory for this character that I developed, and fallen in so much love with this character that I knew I wanted to, or I will be having my own book based on her, and it will fall into that lit RPG, I guess, kind of vibe. With that said, it's another category that I should read before, because for each genre, there's definitely vibes that if you're trying to market to, you want to at least hit some of those highlights. Maybe
Yeah.
not all, but some of them. You don't want to become too wishy-washy, but you want to know what you're marketing toward if you're trying to go that way. But I definitely want to get into that. I have not read a lot, so if you have a
Something else.
recommendation, let me know, Coastal Wizard.
Yeah, throw some Rex in there. Some other ones that I've been told I need to read. Warhammer, like I've heard, like that would be my jam. It's very grimdark. It's like the basis of grimdark.
What was it
Um,
again? Sorry, I
it,
missed the
it was called Warhammer,
Warhammer. Okay, yeah.
and World of Warcraft's another one. I still play WoW, so like for me, like every once in a while I'll throw in $15 for a month, and it's just like, yeah, a little bit of a throwback. But I would love to read some of the literature from that. I'm sure they've got some fantastic stories with peak writers that they could choose whoever they want to write their stories. But
Now, I'm pretty sure, now I could be getting wrong. I think it's Warhammer that is coming out as a movie before too long.
yeah, I've
Think.
heard Henry Cavill's attached.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
I
Then
don't know if it's a show
that's the
or a
one.
movie. I would actually have to look that up, but I'm
Yeah.
assuming it's going to be pretty awesome. Again,
I mean, I always like anything in give me fantasy, give me battles, give me something epic, and I'm like, sold. Take my money.
Did you ever like watch or play any of the Witcher games?
I have not. The funny thing is, no. When it comes to video games, both my fiance and I have the same tendency where if we have a video game console at the house, that is all we will do. So we actually don't have them in the house, but the Witcher books, I just bought the whole series, and so that is
Nice.
something I'm going to start reading this year.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm a very slow reader, so it's either the next one up or I'm going to jump back and forth between that and Wheel of Time because I have a couple. I'm 3 books into that, so I'm trying to bounce between different series that I'm interested in.
I made a video about this a couple, I don't know, like a week ago or something. I feel like I've mentally DNF'd Wheel of Time, just because I've read the first 2 books, but it's too big of the whole post was about like being too big of a series for me, and I do feel like I did buy the third and fourth books, so I own them. But it is one of those where I feel like every time I crack open that third book, I'm like, I don't know, I don't want it, I don't want it.
That's fine. I mean,
There's a couple series like that for me.
and it definitely has. I'm trying to remember when it was put out. It was like early 90s when it was being published, or was that, I don't remember. I remember it was kind of paralleling a little bit and little preceding Game of Thrones. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, there's definitely a vibe of people of that era writing epic fantasy and how it's evolved today, and it's a little still. There's definitely almost a back in the other era in the way he wrote. I don't know how
well,
to
I know. I
describe
feel
it
like
any
that
more
is an
than that.
era of fantasy, though. Like
Mhm.
you're 100% right. Like I feel like it's that era of fantasy.
Yeah,
Like
and so like there were certain things about it that I started to nerd out about just because I am obsessed with anything, a mythology or lore, folktales, or anything like that, and the parallels it has between Arthurian legends and references into Chinese lore and all that kind of stuff. I'm enjoying. Plus, it's a portal fantasy, so there were things I like about it, but it is very slow. It's slow. It's
yeah.
not Tolkien slow, but it is slow.
Well, I mean, there were a few. Like there's another series. It's the one by Terry Goodkind, like the like the Seeker series.
Mhm.
I'm completely drawing a blank on it
It's
right
a
now. But it's another big series that was kind of out at that time as well. And I read the first couple books, and I just, yeah, it's like it's too big of a series. And
Mhm.
I think that, I don't know, like you hit into that double digits in like books, and it's pretty daunting. I think that for me, like, there's just so much that I want to read,
Mhm.
that I don't know. I guess I like series that kind of are more in like that 5 to 7 range, maybe like,
Yeah,
I
well,
don't know.
based on like the stuff you're writing, that's I think more popular anyways. Not to say you don't have some of these longer epic fantasy authors that put out double digit works, but it's not as common as maybe, you look into a totally different genre like the detective kind of genre, mystery and stuff like that, because you have the
Patricia
main character
Cornwell.
and you could have
My,
1,000 books
yes,
based
my
off it
my
and people read
dad
it.
reads like all of those, like any of the ones you can buy at Walmart, and they've got like 30 books. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
used to reid in the summer as a kid. Like I'd go and hang out at my dad's house, and just like that's what I would read was like all of the '90s Patricia Cornwell and Nelson DeMille novels.
There you go. But yeah, certain genres tend to be more accepted a longer term. Certain ones are more accepted shorter. As a writer, you choose what's right for your series, and you go there. But there's people who like standalones and they don't want to ever read a series. I actually had a review. It was interesting. I think it was like a 3-star review or something weird because someone was like, "Great book," but then I realized it's part of a series, and I was just like, "I'm sorry, it does say book one on the cover."
Yeah, that's on them. It happens.
but
It happens to the
but
best of us.
but there are people who just want what they want, and be it a standalone or a 25 book series, people want what they want. You just have to write what you want to write and then find the people who like your work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So outside of cons, since that's where we met, um, how do you market your work? Like
Um,
where else
that
outside
part I'm not
at that
very
book
good
con?
at. That part I'm not very good at, to be honest. Like I'm starting to get a little bit better at it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple like local stores that I'll go to and see if I could, work my way in there. But outside of that, it's mostly just all online. There's not like a big. I don't feel like there's like I live in Charleston. There's not like a big like book
Fun city.
scene here. Yeah, where you can. It's not like New York where you can, really kind of get yourself out there by hustle and bustling, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, yeah, it's mostly an online presence, and I'm trying to get better at that. I was one of those people that I just concentrated on writing, and writing's the part that I love. That I sold. I basically sold my book without really understanding the marketing side of it. So I'm kind of learning that as I go.
I think a lot of us do that. I know that's case in point for me. And I will never say I've mastered marketing because it's always changing
God,
and
no.
I'm always learning and I
Anything.
do spend so much time, even weekly, trying to educate myself, re-educate myself, try to learn, at least something new because it is always changing and try to find out what works for you. Oh, Lord have mercy. But okay, so here's a question, um, and if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But because I know this is a hot button topic right now, and you go through a publishing house yourself, how much or if any effect from this KU strike is affecting you and the whole backlash? Because I'm assuming you're wide then, so it may not even affect you.
I Yes. Like as far I have not seen any effect so far, and I kind of check on a few things here and there. Like usually when I get up in the morning, like I just kind of look at things. Yeah, there hasn't been an effect so far, but I also don't feel like I don't know. I feel like I fall in the cracks a little bit because I haven't had anything recent like released. Like my last release was like a year ago, and I also just like I'm not that big, Like I'm not really that big, so like I just feel like I'm small fish. That I would be really surprised, but I am gutted when I see people's videos on here and they're authors that have multiple books out, and you see like, I mean, obviously I've seen a lot of the piracy stuff, but people, yeah, just straight up like losing, having their things where they've had them for however long, like with KU and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, fortunately for me, I haven't been in, I'm going to knock on wood, haven't been a victim yet.
And
How,
thank you
how
for
about you?
well, let me pause right there. Thank you, Coastal Wizard, for chiming in, and go get your kids to bed. And I'll toss a few lit RPG recs in a moment. Thank you. Appreciate that, because I'm curious now. But for me, yeah, I am right now exclusive through Amazon, so I'm keeping a ear to what's going on. And for anybody who's listening who doesn't know what's going on, essentially, and it's a risk that, yes, piracy is a thing. It's not good in general. I could go into the whole spiel about that for me. At least my perspective of that, but that's neither here nor there. The point being is right now, unless things change, Zon, for people who are exclusive and go through Kindle Limited program, which as an author, and I do that, that's the bulk of my sales. A good 60% of my income is it's not Kindle sales, it's not print, it's not audiobooks. It is the pages read through being in that program of Kindle Limited. So what's happening is that there is a risk that if Amazon sees one of my works on a pirating site, which means someone stole my work and put it up there, they could take my work out of KU or even all my work off Amazon. And that's happened to at least one person here recently, and it's happened to people a lot before. And so it's bringing awareness to what's going on and trying to find ways to approach Zon and say, hey, why not instead of go for the little guys who it wasn't our fault because our books was stolen in the first place, but maybe go after the pirating sites, or at least don't get angry at us that our stuff's being pirated. So that's
Right.
kind of what's going on
We're
behind the
being
scenes.
punished for someone else's crime, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm like, don't punish me because I didn't do anything wrong. But yeah, that's the thing. And like my stuff, I can Google search, and the big pirating company that was taken down last year, the Z Library, a lot of my stuff was on it. And I went through all the formal things. I put all the complaint requests in. I'm in a panic because at any moment Zon could look at me and be like, "And you're out."
I
And it
know
never
that
was
other
taken down.
authors
Never
with
was
my
taken down. I
publisher
could.
were hit during that when that was happening. Like there were other authors that I knew that were affected, and obviously that was scary because you never know. But
Yeah. And so that's the thing. It's like right now is finding ways to approach Zon and just as a reader, just say, hey, this is not cool. As an author, say, hey, can you do something about this so it's not on us? But that's what's going on behind the scenes. And so if you haven't been paying attention, it is scary for people like me who do get bulk of our income through the KU platform at the moment. And it's a lot. So we got some recommendations coming in for lit RPG genre. The Experimental Alchemist. Person joins a game, quote unquote, has massive crafting like games, add buffs. The Experimental Alchemist. Let me know if you know who the author is. I don't know. Again, I'm new to this genre. So let me ask you, Drew. One of the things I always want to make sure we cover is outside of obviously this platform, hashtag book talk, where can people find you? Where can people get your books? So do you have an author's website, newsletter? Let us all know, and I'll put also the links in the below thing once I repurpose this on YouTube. But even still, let us know where we can find you and stalk you.
definitely, yeah. I have links on my bio, basically, to Amazon right now, and I'm primarily all my books are on Amazon and KU. On the Zon, um, right now I'm kind of in a process that, I have a website, but I'm in the process of doing some revamping on that. I actually was looking at your website earlier today. I was like, I just got some kind of cool, I'm going to start doing a little more revamping kind of in the ramp up for book 3 coming out. But yeah, you can also go there and, click the links and it'll take you to Zon, and, you can purchase there.
And where are you on any other social media, or is this the platform to find you?
I am. I'm gonna probably start trying to grow a little bit more on Instagram, but I'm not really on Twitter. I have a Twitter handle, but I don't participate.
Yeah.
And like Facebook, I don't really do a lot on there except for,
Mhm.
just kind of like family and stuff. So it's primarily TikTok and maybe Instagram.
That's perfect. I mean, it's always better. The rule of thumb, I think, is pick one or two and master those. Don't overwhelm yourself. Um, don't do what I do and try to do it all, and then realize you
But
have no time.
definitely, no, I
Stay
like,
always on the phone and never living your life. Don't do what I do. I need to. I'm always trying to be better about that, but I'm not. But yeah. So one other question. I don't remember if you answered this. Do you have a newsletter at the moment? Do you do that or not?
I do not. But I'm planning. Basically, I'm probably going to end up going through MailerLite. So I'll
Okay.
have a newsletter coming up pretty
What
soon.
I use.
Again, sorry.
That's what I use. MailerLite.
Yeah, I've heard, well, I didn't see the sense in paying for it until I kind of knew I was going to be pushing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of one of those things that it's part of my like uh, getting things kind of ramped up for the new book coming out. But yeah, like that's everything I've heard is MailerLite's the one to go with. So like that's something I'm working on.
Woohoo! Well, that will be kind of cool. Let me know how you do that, because then I can always do a newsletter book swap, and we can cross promote
Yeah,
that way and do something like that down the line.
how
So,
like
sorry,
how
what?
successful have newsletters been for you recently? Like just as a curious, do you
Well,
feel like it drives in a lot of business?
I good question. I don't know. I wish I could find that out. I do, and I don't know how long I'm going to do this. I did pay for a platform that's one of those quiz or allows me to embed a quiz or not quiz, a poll
Uh, uh,
essentially,
yeah.
on there. And so one of the things is I ask is, have you read my work before? If so, which ones? Um, you know, that kind of thing. And just curious to see if people who are joining my newsletter have ever know anything about me or not, and if they are going to be potentially interested in buying work and that kind of thing. But I don't know how to track it. I know some other authors on here, Jason Duro really advocates for it. I can't tell if
I
it
probably need to
helps
bug.
sales or not on my end, but I also am one who I do participate in different newsletter builders, which good,
Yeah.
bad, and the ugly can boost numbers, but also means, the people may not really fit with you the best. So I do an annual clearing of if people are subscribed but they haven't engaged in my stuff in the last 6 months, then I clear them out. And so
Mhm.
I just did that recently. But I don't know. I mean, I definitely do hear chatter from the people who are on my newsletters, but I do still feel like personally, this platform is probably the most engaging, and then I'm working on to be better on all the others. But it's nice to have a newsletter because, as Jason Duro says, in the worst case scenario, and all the social medias get crashed or whatever, you are in full control of sending out information to your readership with your newsletter. It is you directly to them, and
Yeah.
so it's a nice thing to have in your back pocket. But yeah, I like the fact when I started with MailerLite, I didn't have to pay off the bat, especially when I didn't know how quickly it was gonna build or that way. But something for you to play around and see, and then
Yeah.
it's worth a try. It is worth a try. So let's see. Coastal Wizard came back and posted Arthur K. Dimmick. I don't know if I pronounced that name right. Not on KU 299. 800 to 1,000 pages. So big read, but I actually like big books, so that's okay. And the Realm Between series, author Phoenix Gray, very game-like, skill use, HP levels up. Interesting. Interesting. Yay, new books. Yes, we both have new books down the way, so it is exciting stuff. And earlier this week, I had a new audiobook release, which was fun. Do you actually have audio? Let me go ask you that one before.
I
I
do.
didn't
I
ask.
do not. I know that Falstaff has, I would say, like select authors that do, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that they um, would. If I really push for it, I think that I could, have somebody do an audio for my works. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Fine.
I think. I think
It's
that
investment.
like what are your opinions on that? Just like, do you feel like it's because I know that you've got like a legit awesome voice from Vikings for you know no when I saw that I was so jelly school like you have no idea. I was like George Blagden, what the f? Drew, step up your game.
Oh Lord, no, that was just a series of celestial bodies aligning correctly for that one to
That's
work out.
awesome.
But yeah, no, I'm still very new in the audiobooks, so I will have to let you know because it does take a year or so for people one to get established because like it's another platform and you're
Right.
reaching a new type of readership
It's
because
intimidating,
audiobook
like
people
what I've
are
looked at.
audiobook people predominantly, so it's a new readership, new platform. And so I'm also trying to kind of like anything, the more works I have out there, the more hopefully traction I get. So, but with that said, I mean, everybody who I've talked to who's done audiobooks for a little while all see a good value out of it. Either it's a bulk of their sales or a nice chunk of their sales. And um again, I wish I was better at marketing. I really am. I really do wish I was better at marketing, but I am having all three of my series being converted at the moment, and the one this week was the 12 tasks, and my narrator is actually on this platform, Blanca Frappier, and she did a fantastic job with that one.
Yeah, I
And
followed. I've been following some audio narrators on here. Just kind of I'm just like kind of getting my feet wet, just kind of seeing what it's like from their side, you know.
yeah, and there are definitely a bunch of them out. There's definitely a bunch of them out here. And once you start listening to them, I'm sure the algorithm's going to kick up a bunch more that I don't know. But there's some really entertaining ones, and some that have fantastic voices on this platform. But yeah, I've enjoyed her, and I'm hoping to do and arrange before too long. I should probably message her after this while I'm thinking about it. But arrange a live like this so she can talk about the narrator side of things, and I can talk about the author side of things of how we're putting out and put out a audiobook. But that, you know, that's new baby, so I'm just starting to spread the word on that one, so I probably have to wait to see how that one tracks. But yeah, three of my Viking series are out, and George Blagden has a fantastic voice, and I'm very honored that he every time he still comes back and he's like, I'm not done with you yet. Because but it's been a fun thing to do and work with him, and he's such a nice person. And so for you, I guess for you, the main thing is if you are interested, um, I guess you ask people who are in your subgenres. It because I'm
Yeah.
wondering, I'm curious if certain subgenres list to either a male narrator more or a female narrator more. Because with you having multiple POVs, that's something you consider. Are you going to do one male, one female, a voice cast, a couple? So you know, a guy and girl or whatever. You know, you
And
have
I've
to
seen
figure out what
some of
works best
that
for you.
kind of like talked about, but I'm wondering what like the the cost of something like that would even be if it would be worth it, you know. But
That's the thing is you just have to look. I guess I don't know how you would be producing it, so I don't know if you're going to go through
yeah,
ACX like indie myself. That's what I did. Is that's Audible's platform, or if you would go through another one, because there are other sites as well that distribute wide versus exclusive, which is what I do when I do the ACX side of it. But um, I mean, I have yet to drop my voice cast one because that will be the one in the blue, Asara's Claws. That will be a voice cast, but that's been a very long road on that one because everybody has to film. Then you have all the voice, you know, the sound editings and the splicing and putting it all together. So it will it's a potential to take a lot longer if you do that route,
yeah,
and versus just picking one or two people. A good example of two is AP Beswick. I don't know if you follow him on here, but
yeah.
his, I think on his second one or maybe his third one, I think it's his second one, he had his primary narrator from book one, which is a male narrator, who's also on here, and then they pulled in a female narrator to do the female side of things. So they end up doing a two-way, and so far I think he's really enjoyed that. But just things to ask, you know, poke around, ask, reach out to narrators, ask other authors who have them and see what works for them. I'm just so new. I wish I could give you more.
No, this is. I mean, it's just nice to kind of chat about it, you know. So
Yeah. And the nice thing on audiobooks, because they are pricier, for people to buy into, but that means you're making, as an author, um, you can make potentially a far bigger cut through an audiobook sale than you could do through a print or an ebook. So,
Yeah.
it could, financially benefit you quicker in some regards, but they are an investment. Unless you do split royalties, which I'm doing with Blanca. I'm trying that one out, to see how it goes. So for 7 years, we're doing 50-50 on all, our share of the profits. Which so the idea on that one, it won't cost me anything to produce, but if I earn half of what I could potentially. Does that make sense?
No, I'm following.
Okay, good. But yeah. Okay, well, since we've rounded the hour, let me know, is there any topics you would like us to cover that we haven't? Any questions that you would have liked to have talked about, or any questions you have? Because, this is your time to shine.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like I feel good about this, like I feel like we kind of discussed mostly what I kind of expected we would. I don't have anything specific that I was on here really looking to talk about. I talked about my book a little bit, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
okay. What was that first con this year that people could potentially find you at? You said it's up in Charlotte?
So, yeah, it's in Winston-Salem,
I
and
was
that is
just there
called
this
Saga.
weekend.
Yeah, it's called Saga. It's March. I hope I get the dates right. I think it's the 10th through the 12th. I know it's something like that. What's sad is I've already got a hotel and everything. I can't even remember the exact date right now, but it's coming up. Yeah, it's like a month from now. Um,
That's fantastic.
I think there's another one in April. I'm 50/50 on, and then there's the first week of May, Atomicon, which is in Charleston. I'll be at that one just because it's in my backyard. And then the next really big one would be Con Carolinas, and that is in June.
Fun. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm gearing up this year. Well, I know I'm not thinking. I already invested into it. I'm gonna try to do the 20 books to 50K this fall. So I got my ticket because I was like, before the ticket prices, when I went there, got the hotel. So now I just have to get the plane tickets because that's over in Vegas. But that's my big new thing this year. But it's not somewhere I'm not going to sell there or anything. I'm just going to go there to learn and be like, teach me all the ways that I'm doing
That's
things wrong.
that's what Saga is for me. It's the first one in like a year that I'm going to, and I don't have like any responsibilities that I know of yet. Like I'm not going to sell, I'm not going to do panels. I'm just gonna kind of go and just enjoy it as like a guest, I guess. So it'll be kind of
That's
nice.
cool. Well, it looks
But
like Ghost Wizard says he's local to Charlotte too, so maybe he'll or she he will. I can't see the icon. Um, join and meet you at some. That's kind of
that's
cool.
right. Come and get your signed copy.
I
I've
love
got
it.
I
I
got
love signed
got
copies.
plenty of books. Just got plenty of them.
Do you sell any signed copies through your website or any other platforms, or just at the cons?
No, but when I go to the con, I don't do that yet. That may be something that I've seen a lot of authors doing that on here, and I'm like, well, that's probably something that I'm missing on. But I definitely like to whatever stock that Falstaff usually has. I like to go in and just go crazy with signatures. So most, I think that if you go to a con and you buy a physical copy, whether I'm there or not, there's a good chance you'll get one that's signed and by me. So
That's so cool. I love that. I love that. Yeah, doing my Kickstarter, that's just a fun thing that I can offer people is like, you get signed copies. If you're doing one of the print levels, you're getting a signed copy. And along with other things, but it's just fun. It's just that little
yeah,
extra.
I
And
agree.
and and another thing to think about, which is something that I've been thinking about and considering, is those fancy schmancy book plates where you can sign and easily mail to fans who have bought your book, online or through retail shops, and be
I do
like,
need to look into that. That's not something I've really seen yet, but I'd be interested.
yeah, because it's something simple, and then just be like, here's my signed book plate. Here you go, super fan. Signed, dedicated. Stick it in the book you have. Voila. Fantastic. Well, thank you again for coming out. And in the future, obviously, at any point, if you want to do one of these again, I do them weekly. I just have to schedule people in. That
Yeah,
balance
no,
of the schedule,
I
but
might once I have like a date coming up for the book, maybe I'll hit you up again. I,
perfect.
especially if it's a few months from now. Like if it's like a month from now, no, but
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
let
No,
you
I
talk to
assume it.
other people.
But yeah, definitely let me know. I love celebrating new releases, and I know when it gets to the March thing, I'll be promoting my release of the
Yeah,
Underrealms when it comes out. But I love chiming in. And if you do a release party on here, let me know, because that's another thing you can think about is release the book and tell people check your link in.
that's true.
You put a little hat on, what are those book talk crowns, and
Oh God, yes. I think that'd be hilarious though.
that would be hysterical. For me, I don't really do the crown thing, but I do have like war helmets around here in
Did
my
you
house.
now? Did you do one for the previous book that you released?
I did not do. Let me think. I'm trying to think. I No, I don't think I've done a true release party. The first time I did a live event was for the Kickstarter, since that's a new thing for me this year to try. But I think going forward, I would like to do a release party on here, and I have to verify this. So I don't know. I could say something, I'd be wrong, but I think the U.S. recently got permission to do shops directly through this platform, because I know the UK has been doing it for a while. um, so it's something that, if that's the case, I'm gonna try to sign up, because then I can do live signings through here. Because I've seen other people do that, like they will buy directly through the TikTok shop and sign and get the information. It's gonna be sent out tomorrow. I'm like, ooh, that would be cool.
Yeah,
Another way to make sales.
that's right. Got to take
Okay,
advantage.
well,
Right?
yes, exactly. Well, I'm gonna wrap up because I can feel my throat getting scratchy. The
Yep.
hour
No,
mark
the
has
smartest
hit.
thing I did today was grab water. I don't know why I did that, but I'm so glad I did.
Perfect. Very smart. I need to be better about this. I need a notepad so I can take all these wonderful notes when people give me recommendations. And yes, I need to be smarter about that. But water on the side. But thank you so much. And I
Yep.
will catch up with you before too much longer, and hope we can do one of these before too long.
Yep. See
And
you
for
later.
everybody who watched, thank you guys for watching and chiming in.
Yep. Bye, everybody.